Mr. Exporter has just returned from a trade fair where he's met up with several potential buyers. This time, however, he was also looking for something else. He wanted information about how to boost his sales by giving his customers 60-day open account credit terms. At the fair, he heard about international factoring. So he searched the internet and found this web page, which lists a number of international factoring companies in his country, all members of the FCI network. So he picks up the phone and arranges a meeting with Ms. Export Factor, an FCI correspondent. She shows up right on time. He explains that he wants to expand his business by selling more products abroad. He's heard that open account terms could help. He wants to know more. Ms. Export Factor gladly tells him all about international factoring, how it can finance his business, as well as remove credit risks and collection problems. How she and her colleagues in the chosen country will check out the potential buyer's credit rating and confirm if that rating can justify the credit limit that's needed for the orders. Mr. Exporter is getting interested. Ms. Export Factor continues. She tells once the credit has been approved, Mr. Exporter ships his goods abroad, along with the invoice and shipping documents. He also sends a copy of the invoice to her. Ms. Export Factor then tells him that as soon as she receives the invoice copy, she will pay him 80% of the invoice value. Now he's really interested. But he also wants to know when to expect the remaining 20%. The balance, she assures him, will be paid as soon as the buyer pays her correspondent in the buyer's country. Of course, Mr. Exporter wants to know what if the buyer can't pay or won't pay. Ms. Export Factor tells him, no worries. She will pay him, provided the outstanding amount is no more than the approved credit limit, and there's no problem with the merchandise. She gets her money back from her correspondent in the buyer's country. Essentially, she purchases the debt created when Mr. Exporter ships the goods. Mr. Exporter likes what he hears, but presses for more details. He wants to know how easy it is to get the credit limits. She explains that her FCI correspondent, once he receives the details, can make a quick and realistic evaluation of the buyer's credit worthiness. It all takes just a few days. Mr. Exporter is convinced, to a point. Before committing, he wants to see what FCI can do with one of his prospective foreign buyers. So he gives Ms. Export Factor the details. It's been a good meeting. Back at the office, she gets on the phone to Mr. Import Factor, her FCI correspondent of choice in the country of the buyer. She explains the situation. He is ready to help as soon as he receives the details over the FCI system. Mr. Import Factor immediately checks all in-house information on the importer and also calls for credit reports from an outside agency. The financial statements arrive. He's satisfied and gives the limit to Ms. Export Factor, who then signs a contract with the exporter. The exporter receives a good order from the importer by offering open account terms. So, Mr. Exporter ships the goods with an invoice to the importer. He also sends a copy of the invoice to Ms. Export Factor, and she pays him 80% of the amount, and sends the invoice date to Mr. Import Factor, who then goes about collecting the full payment from the importer. So the remaining 20% can be paid to the exporter. Which, of course, makes Mr. Exporter very happy that he went to that trade fair in the first place and discovered international factoring with Factors Chain International. Millions of companies worldwide currently are using international factoring. What about your company? Find out today how it can profit. Call one of the FCI members in your country.